Chapter 14. Test Planning. This chapter gives the foundation of test-related artifacts created and used in testing at various levels. This may be termed test harness or test suite. The following concepts have been covered in detail: test policy, test strategy, test planning, test scenario. What is planning? Planning is the most important phase in the project or product life cycle. It is the fundamental management function, which involves deciding before. What is test planning? Test planning refers to planning the activities that must be performed during testing in order to achieve the objectives of the test. Test policy. Test policy is defined at organization level by the senior management of the organization. Test policy differs significantly for product organization. The entire product is owned by the organization and it is responsible for any problem faced by final user while using the product. And project organization. Test strategy converts the test policy decisions into actions. Content of test strategy in general. Introduction defines the type of application under testing. Scope defines the circumstances where this strategy will be applicable or not applicable, as the case may be. Responsibility and authority defines the authorities of test manager, test leads and test team members, and their responsibilities in entire software development life cycle. Approach defines the methodology used in testing. Risk analysis. Every automation effort is linked with risk. It is the process of identifying and analyzing potential issues that could negatively impact key business initiatives or critical projects in order to help organizations avoid or mitigate those risks. Test objectives defines the critical success factors for the project as well as for testing are covered by test objective definition. Limitations. Testing cannot cover all the aspects of system including all features and attributes. Test planning is required for all stakeholders to the project to understand their roles and responsibilities in testing process. Test plan benefits build knowledge of stakeholders about testing. It builds essential knowledge of all stakeholders in planning for tests and execution of tests. Identify stakeholders. Test plan identifies the audiences for test plan and resources for writing test plan, test scenario, test cases, and defining test data. Enhance visibility. Test plan improves visibility of the upcoming test to management, project team, customer and test team at large. Ensure understanding. Test planning ensures complete understanding of the test event by test planner and test team. Assist in team building. Test planning helps in test building for test team. It is an effective tool of communication for a test team. Quality plan and test plan. Quality plan defines how quality will be built development activity through use of tools and techniques. Test plan defines various activities related to quality control and it is detective and corrective in nature. Levels of test planning. Testing may start at proposal level and may go up to acceptance testing level. Different organizations handle test planning in different ways. Some may prepare a master plan containing links to various child plan. Test estimation. Test plan defines the way testing will be done. Process of test estimation starts from requirements phase and end only when the application is finally delivered and accepted by the customer. Two approaches for test estimation. 1. The metrics-based approach is used for estimating the testing effort based on metrics of similar projects or based on historical values available with organizational database. Test standards. Standards are meant to give uniformity and understanding on the subject for which they are developed and written. Sources of standards. 1. External standards made by an entity external to an organization. 2. Internal standards defined by customer as per his business requirements for the given building test data and test cases. Test plan defines how the system will be tested. Actual testing execution is done by the test cases and test dam. One of the methods of doing system testing is given below. Developing test scenarios, written for defining end-to-end flow of how user is going to use the application. Developing test cases, written using test scenario developed in earlier stage. Developing test data, used as inputs to the test while testing an application. Test scenario defines the entire story of an application from user's perspective. Test scenario must define the following: actors taking part in transaction. Actors can be of three types, viz., simple actor, complex actor and average actor. transaction to the system or internal to test case. Test cases are derived from the test scenario. Test case describes each transaction and expected result of each transaction included in test scenario. Essential activities in testing. Testing activities differ significantly as per project, customer's view about testing or management's view in case of product organization. It is also driven by the scope of testing for the given project or product. The following are some essential activities. Maintain test strategy, test plan, test scenario and test cases in a central location so that they are available to concerned people when required. Follow configuration management standards. Be sure to include data files in test repository. Leverage test case signed by the organization for its own use, or may be given by customer for the project, or derived from some national, international standard, as the case may be. While developing test script, one must do the following. Determine testing levels when the test scripts will be used, for example, unit scripting used for unit testing and regression testing scripts for regression testing. Pseudo-concurrency scripting may be required to be developed, when the scope of development and ONG involves concurrency of user operations. Integration scripting used in integration testing where the parameters are passed from one system to another. Regression scripting used in regression testing after fixing of defects or making changes in software. Stress and performance scripting required for special tests on stress testing and performance testing. Test scripts must contain information about the following. Test item for which the script is being developed and for which it will be used. This describes the purpose of a script. Author, owner of script. Name of a person who has written or captured and managed the script may be required for traceability purpose. Sequence of scripts. Some scripts may need some preconditions and environmental setup for their execution. Analysis results. Comparison of system components status at the end of execution of scripts. Terminal outputs with respect to expected terminal output may be compared. It may cover server output as well as various client-level outputs as required. File contents at the end of testing with respect to expected file contents must be compared to find the deviations. Environmental activities, such as status logs, error logs and activity logs created due to execution of test scripts must be captured and compared with expected logs. Order of outputs processing done by the system as a result of execution of particular script can be used for the test log preparation. Ability to process actions by using test scripts which can be used for creating test records and test log. Test management software. There are few software applications available for covering all the activities of testing, happenings or events during development life cycle. It may or may not contain test policy and test strategy as these are top management decisions. Test log document. Test log is a result of execution of testing activity as defined in test plan. It is evidence that test case has been executed and testing has been done as planned. It also details about which test cases have passed and which test cases have failed. Test file. Test file contains all the artifacts related to testing, starting from test scenario till test data. All transactions occurring normally when application is used. While creating a test scenario, one needs to know the business transactions in details. Also, one has to consider a normal business flow and design the requirement-based test scenarios accordingly. All possibilities of invalid data in normal transactions must be considered. While considering a business scenario, one may have to consider normal user profiles. Any transactions which may try to violate edit check expected. System may have various controls to give error messages or protect the users from doing something which is not expected by the system. Equivalence partitioning. Equivalence partitioning technique of test data definition can be applied where input data to a program or output data from a program is divided into different categories or partitions so that test cases can be developed for each category of input or open equivalence. Consider a case of field expecting a numerical value, from negative v infinity to positive v infinity. One-sided closed equivalence. Consider a case of a field accepting all positive numbers, starting 0 to positive v infinity. There is one valid and one invalid as class is closed from one side only. Both-sided closed equivalence. Consider a field accepting number of characters between 1 to 30 only. It has a finite range where minimum 1 character and maximum 30 characters can be accepted. It can have 1 valid and 2 invalid classes. Multiple class definitions for equivalence partitioning. Consider a field accepting a positive number as an amount to be withdrawn from a bank between 0 rupees to 10,000 rupees. There may various schemes of defining equivalence partitioning in such situations. One scheme may be positive and negative numbers, another may be numeric and non-numeric numbers. One must understand the domain and select the scheme of equivalence partition accordingly. Boundary value analysis. Boundary value analysis is a method of definition of test date which complements the test data definition by equivalence partitioning. Advantages of boundary value analysis. This is a black box technique that focuses on the boundaries of the input domain or output domain rather than its center or any other area. State transition. State transition represents a change in the status of the system due to some activity, either on part of user or some stimuli coming from other system or time. State transition activities may be guided by the time factor with conditions such as max, min and exactly, which may use equivalence partitioning or boundary value analysis, as the case may be. Error guessing. Error guessing needs a guesswork on part of testers to find what will work and what will not work in the given application. Error guessing is used extensively when there are limitations for usage of equivalence partitioning and boundary values analysis technique. Test data generator. Some software packages can create test transactions for testing application systems and programs on the basis of requirements and designs. Roles and responsibilities in testing life cycle. Testing involves many roles, responsibilities and participation in various activities of testing life cycle. Various roles and their corresponding responsibilities are defined in test policy, test strategy and test plan. Important roles and responsibilities in testing. Test manager. Roles and responsibilities of a test manager must be defined in test policy and test strategy. Test manager generally acts as a mentor, guide, philosopher and friend of testers in case of matrix structure. Test leads or senior test engineers. Test leads or senior test engineers lead the test teams in absence of test manager or in a situation where test manager's role may not be justifiable. For smaller teams, presence of test manager may not be required if testing is simple or efforts required are less. Here we are considering responsibilities of test leads or senior test engineers when test manager is present. Test leads are usually responsible for the following. Test progress monitoring. One needs to monitor the test progress as per plan and take actions on deviations in test process with respect to plan or estimation. The purpose of test monitoring is to give feedback and visibility about test activities which can be used for initiating corrective and preventive actions. Common test metrics used for monitoring may include the following. Percentage of work done in test case preparation with respect to plan. Percentage of work done in test environment preparation as against planned work and efforts. Test case execution. Defect information. Test coverage of requirements, risks or code. Subjective confidence of testers in the product which can be derived on the basis of test cases executed and number of defects found. Dates of test milestones expected to be reached and actually reached. Testing costs, including the cost compared to the benefit of finding the next defect or to run the next test.